Come closer, my child. Do not rush this moment. There is a silence around you right now that is not empty. He is listening. Heaven has leaned forward, and even time itself has paused to observe the posture of your heart. The season you are standing in is not loud, yet it is weighty. It is not dramatic on the surface, yet it is charged with consequence. I am speaking softly because what is unfolding does not require force. It requires awareness. You have felt it, even if you could not name it. A subtle pressure in the spirit. A sense that ordinary days have begun to carry unusual significance. Moments that seem small are echoing longer than they should. Decisions that appear harmless are leaving traces behind them. This is because this season is being measured, not by clocks but by obedience, attentiveness, and reverence. Nothing you do now disappears unseen. I have watched you hesitate. I have watched you wait. I have watched you wrestle between rest and delay, between discernment and fear. And I want you to know this first truth before anything else is revealed. You are not in trouble. You are not late. You are not forgotten. But you are being observed with intention. Heaven is not scrutinizing you to accuse you. Heaven is watching because what you do next matters more than you realize. There is an angelic presence near you, firm and unwavering, though you may not yet recognize it. You sense protection without understanding its source. You sense restraint around chaos that never quite reaches you. This is not coincidence. This is guardianship. This is order being enforced quietly while you learn how to move wisely within it. Time has a voice in this season. It is speaking through interruptions, through delays that redirect you, through sudden clarity that arrives when you stop forcing answers. You are being taught how to steward moments, not just outcomes. How to honor pauses, not just progress. The way you treat this season determines how the next one opens. There are things forming beneath the surface that you cannot yet see. Connections aligning. Exposures preparing. Shifts arranging themselves around your obedience. You may feel as though nothing is happening, yet heaven says much is happening precisely because you have not rushed ahead of me. Still, there is a narrowness to this path now. Fewer margins for distraction. Less tolerance for avoidance. What once could be postponed without consequence now leaves a mark if ignored. Do not be afraid of this awareness. It is a gift. Many move through seasons like this asleep, wasting what was meant to prepare them for elevation. You, however, have been awakened gently. That is mercy. That is favor. That is trust. I want you to remain sensitive. Notice how peace withdraws when something is not aligned. Notice how clarity increases when you choose integrity over comfort. Notice how certain doors feel heavier to open now. That is not resistance. That is discernment being sharpened. And listen carefully, my child. As you walk through this message, allow your heart to respond, not just your mind. If this word resonates within you, if you feel the stillness around it, I invite you to honor that recognition. You may quietly affirm it by aligning yourself with this message, by sharing it with those who are meant to hear, and by staying connected to this flow of revelation. And if your spirit feels stirred, write in the comments, "I will not waste this season," as a declaration before heaven that you are present and listening. This is only the beginning of the revealing. You are not being rushed, but you are being prepared. I speak now with a steadiness that does not tremble. I am Archangel Michael, assigned to stand watch in seasons like this, when time itself becomes a testimony. You feel my presence not as noise, but as firmness, as a line drawn where chaos once tried to cross, as a quiet authority that does not argue, but enforces. Heaven is taking account, my child. not in fear, not in accusation, but in truth. Every moment you handle is being weighed for what it carries, not for how it appears. Angels are not counting hours. They are observing alignment. They are watching what you choose when no one pressures you. They are recording how you respond when urgency tempts you to move without instruction. There are moments you dismissed as insignificant that were, in fact, invitations. Moments you nearly ignored that were protection disguised as inconvenience. When plans fell through, it was not always delay. Sometimes it was removal. When answers did not come quickly, it was not silence. It was mercy holding you back from knowledge you were not yet meant to act upon. Understand this clearly. Heaven does not watch to limit you. Heaven watches to partner with you. When you move in discernment, authority increases around you. When you pause in wisdom, forces you cannot see are rearranged on your behalf. But when you override conviction, even slightly, the atmosphere shifts, not in punishment, but in resistance. This season is being recorded because it sits at a junction. Paths are close together here. A single decision can alter years. That is why you feel the weight even in ordinary choices. That is why distractions now cost more energy than they used to. You are no longer in a season where carelessness is neutral. Everything is formative. I have seen you grow quieter, more observant, less reactive. That is not weakness. That is training. Warriors are not forged in noise but in discipline. Your restraint has been noted. Your refusal to act from emotion alone has been registered in heaven's courts. There are assignments that require this level of self-governance, and you are being assessed for trust. Do not misunderstand me. This is not a test you are about to fail. This is a measure revealing what you are ready to carry. Authority is not given to those who move fastest, but to those who move cleanly. Destiny responds to those who respect timing. Some around you do not feel this pressure because they are not assigned to this path. Do not compare your pace to theirs. Do not envy their ease. What feels heavy to you is heavy because it matters. What feels slow is slow because precision is required. Heaven is also watching how you treat rest, whether you use it to listen or to escape, whether you honor stillness or fill it with noise. Even rest can be stewardship when it is chosen in alignment. Even silence can be obedience. I stand between you and what would have rushed you prematurely. There were moments danger tried to disguise itself as opportunity. There were doors that looked promising but would have drained you of clarity. They did not open because I did not permit them to. Not everything blocked was an attack. Some blockages were shields. Know this, my child. You are being watched because you are being prepared to move when the signal comes. This season is teaching you how to hold time without wasting it, how to be alert without anxiety, how to wait without drifting. Stay attentive. Stay humble. Stay willing. The record being written now will speak for you later. Listen carefully now, my child, because the weight you feel is not imagined. This season is narrow by design. It is not stretched wide like others before it, where mistakes could be absorbed and time could be recovered casually. This one is different. It is a corridor, not a field. And corridors are meant to be passed through with intention. What makes this season heavy is not pressure from me, but consequence attached to movement. Choices made now travel farther than you expect. Words spoken now echo longer than before. What you agree with internally begins to take shape externally more quickly. You are learning that time has density here. Each moment carries substance. This is the shadow many sense but cannot name. It is not darkness. It is gravity. Destiny has drawn close enough that you can feel its pull. That is why distractions feel louder and restlessness feels sharper. That is why the things that once satisfied you now feel thin. Your spirit knows you are near something that cannot be approached casually. I need you to understand this without fear. Urgency does not mean panic. Wait does not mean danger. It means importance. This is a hinge season. What closes here will not reopen in the same way. What opens here will require you to step through as you are, not as you plan to become later. You have sensed it in your relationships. Some conversations feel overdue. Some connections feel strained, not because they are broken, but because they cannot continue on autopilot. Truth wants room now. Alignment wants honesty. Avoidance costs more than it used to. Silence where words are required begins to feel heavy in your chest. This season touches calling as well. You are being asked to clarify what you are willing to carry and what you must lay down. Not everything you can do should follow you forward. Some skills, habits, and roles were for survival, not destiny. If you try to drag them through this narrow place, you will feel exhausted without knowing why. Do not confuse this with loss. It is refinement. Fire does not destroy gold, it reveals it. And this season is warm with that kind of heat. Enough to expose, not enough to consume. There is also relational consequence here, especially concerning the one bound to your heart by purpose. Their life intersects this season even if they do not yet understand how. Decisions you make now ripple toward them. Delays you tolerate now affect what they will have to confront later. This is why your spirit feels alert even when your mind wants rest. You are carrying more than yourself, even in stillness. You may feel tempted to rush just to escape the weight. Do not. Speed chosen for relief leads to regret. Let the weight teach you. Let it train your discernment. Let it slow your impulses until wisdom becomes instinct. At the same time, do not drift. Stillness is not stagnation when it is intentional, but drifting is costly here. This is not the season to numb yourself, to fill time so you do not have to listen. Every attempt to avoid awareness will require extra effort to undo later. I am not asking you to be perfect. I am asking you to be present. Present with me. Present with yourself. Present with the signals in your spirit. When you do, guidance comes quietly but clearly. When you ignore them, confusion multiplies. This season will pass, but it will not repeat. When you look back, you will see that this was the moment where trajectory was decided, even though nothing dramatic happened on the surface. Those are the seasons heaven values most. Stay steady, my child. You are not behind. You are being positioned. I want you to see now what has been happening beyond your awareness, because this season has not only pressed on you, it has pressed heavily on the one connected to you by destiny. Their soul has been under a weight they did not expect, and it has begun to bend them in ways they cannot hide any longer. They are not as strong as they appear. Behind their composure is an inner unraveling. Decisions they postponed have returned demanding answers. Words they swallowed have begun to burn. They feel time slipping, not in days or months, but in chances. There is a growing fear in them that something sacred is moving beyond reach, and they do not know how to stop it. You have felt the distance, even if no argument caused it. You have sensed the inconsistency, the emotional static, the moments where they almost reach out and then pull back. This is not indifference. It is overwhelm. They are standing at the edge of realization, and realization is terrifying when it reveals how much has been mishandled. They replay moments involving you, conversations they should have taken seriously, invitations they delayed, signals they dismissed because they assumed there would be more time. Now time feels louder to them than it ever has. Silence has become unbearable. Distraction no longer works. Even rest does not restore them, because conviction follows them into stillness. They are collapsing inward, not outward. This is why others may not notice, but heaven does. Their heart is heavy with regret they cannot yet name aloud. They are afraid to admit how much you matter because a mission would require action, and action would require courage they are still gathering. Guilt has been whispering to them, telling them they have already ruined what was meant to be protected. Fear has joined in, warning them that reaching out now may expose how late they are. They are caught between longing and shame, between desire and self-doubt. This inner tension has exhausted them. There are nights they lie awake, feeling watched by time itself. Not judged but reminded. Memories surface uninvited. Your presence appears in their thoughts when they least expect it. Not as fantasy but as truth. As something real they failed to honor properly. They sense that something is shifty without their permission. That alignment is happening elsewhere. That doors are adjusting. This frightens them because they are used to control, to delaying decisions until they feel ready. This season has stripped that illusion. Readiness is no longer the gatekeeper. Obedience is. They do not yet understand that this collapse is mercy. They believe it is loss. But what is breaking in them is not their destiny. It is their resistance. Pride is weakening. Justifications are thinning. The walls they built to protect themselves from vulnerability are cracking under the weight of truth. They fear losing you, but even deeper, they fear seeing clearly and realizing they almost forfeited something irreplaceable. That fear has humbled them more than any confrontation ever could. They are beginning to recognize that love tied to destiny cannot be managed casually. It demands presence. It demands courage. It demands timing honored, not assumed. You have not caused this pressure. Your stillness has. Your restraint has. Your refusal to chase, to force, to rescue them from their own awakening has allowed truth to reach them without distortion. Heaven often uses silence more powerfully than speech. Do not misinterpret their struggle as rejection. It is reckoning. They are being confronted by the version of themselves that wasted time, and that confrontation is painful. But it is necessary. This is not the end of their story. It is the breaking point before awakening. And while they feel alone in it, they are not abandoned. Heaven is near them as it is near you, guiding this collapse toward clarity. Remain steady, my child. What is falling apart in them is making room for truth. There are truths you were never meant to carry consciously until now, because knowing them too early would have tempted you to intervene in ways that would have delayed justice. But this is the season where what was hidden begins to loosen its grip, not to burden you, but to free you from confusion. Much of what affected the course of this connection did not happen loudly. It happened in the quiet margins of time, in postponed conversations, in messages drafted and never sent, in meetings always scheduled, then pushed aside, in internal warnings that were rationalized away. What you felt as distance was often the result of moments mishandled when no one was watching. There were signs given that were not honored, gentle urgings that were delayed until they lost urgency. Opportunities wrapped in simplicity that were dismissed because they did not feel dramatic enough to matter. Time was assumed, not respected. And assumption always exacts a cost. There are symbolic objects tied to this story that carry more weight than they appear. A letter never opened when it mattered. A call missed that could have changed tone and timing. A document left unread. A place avoided because it held truth too close to the surface. These were not coincidences. They were intersections. and when they were bypassed, the path did not disappear, it bent. You wondered at times why clarity seemed withheld, why answers came later indirectly. It was because others were being given time to respond correctly, and they did not. Heaven is patient, but it is not passive. When repeated warnings are ignored, time becomes a witness instead of a cushion. There were conversations about you that took place without your presence. Not all were malicious, but many were careless. Your name was spoken without the weight it deserved. Your role was minimized to ease the conscience of those who feared responsibility. This distortion did not go unnoticed. It was recorded. What was hidden from you was not the truth of who you are, but the depth of avoidance happening around you. Others benefited from delay because delay gave them room to remain unaccountable. As long as nothing was decided, nothing had to be corrected. Time was used as a shield. You may now recognize moments where you felt inexplicably restrained from acting, where something in you said to wait, even though you could have spoken, pursued, or pressed for clarity. That restraint was protection. Had you moved with the full knowledge of what was happening, you might have absorbed pain that was not yours to carry. This season reveals not to reopen wounds, but to close them cleanly. You are being shown enough to understand why things unfolded as they did, without being pulled into bitterness. Understanding is being offered without accusation. Truth without venom. The hidden story is not meant to rewrite the past, but to release you from the false belief that you did something wrong by waiting. You did not miss your moment. Others missed theirs, and heaven allowed time to expose that difference naturally. What was concealed is now losing its power because it no longer controls the narrative. You are no longer guessing. You are discerning. And discernment brings peace where speculation never could. Hold this knowledge gently. It is not a weapon. It is a lens. And through it, you will begin to see why justice is not rushed, but precise. What was hidden is being illuminated not to shame, but to realign. Now I will show you what delay fed, because time unused never remains neutral. When purpose is postponed, something else always moves in to occupy the space. This is where interference took root, not through force, but through proximity. There was someone close enough to observe without being questioned. Someone who noticed hesitation and learned how to benefit from it. They did not need to create chaos. All they needed was time. Time gave them access. Time allowed them to influence perception quietly, to speak just enough to bend understanding without appearing hostile. This was not always obvious jealousy. It was subtler than that. It sounded like concern. It wore the language of caution. It positioned itself as wisdom while undermining courage. It did not attack you directly. It attacked momentum. It whispered that waiting was safer than choosing, that delay was maturity, that clarity would come later. And while waiting looked harmless, it became a tool. Every season has predators that feed on hesitation. This one was no different. As long as nothing was decided, accountability stayed dormant. As long as truth was postponed, manipulation could breathe. This interference thrived in half-steps and unanswered questions. Understand this clearly, my child. The enemy did not overpower destiny. They exploited timing. They did not steal what was guarded. I benefited from what was unintended, and heaven allowed it only long enough for exposure to be undeniable. There were moments when confusion intensified after progress, moments when clarity seemed to retreat just as it approached. That was not coincidence. That was resistance responding to threat. When alignment neared, interference increased. When truth pressed forward, distraction followed. This is how you know something mattered. The one bound to you by destiny was not blind to this influence. but they underestimated it. They believed they could manage it later. They believed control would remain theirs. But delay strengthens the voice you listen to most, and over time, that voice stopped being truth. I stood watch as this unfolded. I did not intervene prematurely because premature rescue prevents revelation. Had this interference been removed too early, its methods would have gone unnamed, and its pattern would have repeated. Exposure requires space. Justice requires evidence. And time provided both. Now the season has turned. What benefited from delay is losing oxygen. Conversations that once redirected now feel hollow. Influence that once felt safe now feels intrusive. The one who manipulated timing is being unsettled because their leverage depended on stagnation, and stagnation is ending. Do not fear retaliation. This interference has no authority over you. Its power was situational, not ordained. Once movement resumes an alignment, it cannot follow. It was never assigned to your future. What you are witnessing now is the collapse of advantage built on avoidance. The enemy's strength was never in action, only in postponement. And postponement has reached its limit. You were not naive. You were protected. The delay that frustrated you also prevented deeper harm. And now, as momentum returns, you will see how swiftly what once felt entrenched dissolves. Stand firm, my child. What fed on wasted time cannot survive redeemed time. Now the atmosphere shifts quietly but unmistakably. What was hidden in shadow is brought into review not by human argument, but by divine order. This is the moment when heaven opens its court, and nothing exaggerated survives. Only truth is allowed to stand. I have initiated an investigation that does not rely on accusation. It relies on light. Motives are being examined, not by what was said aloud, but by what was intended in silence. Actions are being weighed alongside opportunities ignored. Even time itself has been summoned as a witness, carrying record of who honored instruction and who resisted it. You were protected more than you know. There were outcomes that would have harmed you deeply had you been allowed to walk forward unaware. There were alignments that appeared promising, but carried corrosion beneath their surface. My restraint around you was not limitation. It was preservation. You were held back so truth could move ahead of you and clear the path. As this investigation unfolds, lies do not need to be confronted aggressively. They unravel on their own. Stories that once sounded convincing lose coherence. Intentions that were hidden behind politeness are exposed by inconsistency. Nothing is being forced. Everything is being revealed. Those who assume time would erase accountability are discovering that time has a memory. It does not forget what was delayed out of fear, nor does it ignore what was postponed for convenience. Every unkept responsibility leaves a residue, and that residue is now visible. You may notice sudden clarity around situations that once confused you. Insights arriving without effort. Feelings settling where questions once lived. This is evidence that the investigation is working in your favor. When truth is confirmed in heaven, peace follows on earth. Be still during this phase. Stillness is not passivity here. It is cooperation. The less you strive to explain or defend yourself, the faster clarity establishes itself. Your role is not to prosecute. It is to remain aligned. Discord does not rush. It resolves. And what it resolves cannot be overturned by opinion or manipulation. Justice here is not loud, but it is final. You are safe within this process. What is being uncovered cannot harm you. It can only free you. Feel it now, my child. The pressure that once pressed inward has begun to release. Not because the weight was imaginary, but because the mechanism holding it in place has shifted. This is what happens when the clock moves in the spirit. Nothing announces it loudly, yet everything responds. What was stalled begins to breathe again. Not all at once, not chaotically, but with intention. You may notice that decisions no longer feel as heavy, that clarity arrives without strain, that energy returns where fatigue once lingered. This is not emotional relief alone. This is alignment restoring flow. Time, which once felt resistant, is now cooperative. It is no longer standing in your way because it is no longer being misused around you. What was delayed for the wrong reasons has been released from holding power. What was paused for protection has fulfilled its purpose. Now movement resumes without danger attached to it. Angels have shifted positions. Assignments have been updated. Where there was containment, there is now guidance. Where there was restraint, there is now direction. This is acceleration, but not the kind that overwhelms. It is the kind that feels natural, as if things are finally moving at the speed they were always meant to. You may feel an internal urgency that is calm, not anxious, a readiness that does not rush. This is the signal you were being prepared for. Not an instruction shouted from the outside, but a knowing rising from within. When timing aligns, obedience feels lighter. The one connected to you by destiny is feeling this shift as well, though they may not yet have language for it. The heaviness that pressed them inward has cracked. The fog that dulled their perception is thinning. They are beginning to see with clarity that does not flatter them, but it does free them. Truth has reached their heart, not as accusation but as realization. They are recognizing patterns they once defended. They are seeing how delay cost them peace. They are understanding that what they labeled caution was often fear. This awareness is sobering, but it is also awakening. You may sense them thinking of you more clearly now. Not as an idea, not as comfort, but as responsibility. They are beginning to understand that connection with you requires presence, not convenience. Courage, not postponement. Integrity, not control. Do not mistake this awakening for instant transformation. Seeds are breaking open beneath the surface before anything visible appears. But once a seed breaks, it cannot return to its former state. Awareness has altered them permanently. At the same time, momentum around you increases. Opportunities align more cleanly. Conversations open without effort. Doors that felt heavy now move with less resistance. This is not coincidence. It is timing responding to stewardship. What was lost to delay is being redeemed, not by repeating the past, but by restoring momentum with wisdom. You are not being rushed to catch up. You are being carried forward by a current that knows exactly where it is going. Remain attentive, but do not strain. This phase requires trust more than effort. The clock has shifted because alignment was achieved, not because force was applied. Let movement happen without gripping it too tightly. This is the moment where waiting turns into walking, where stillness gives way to motion, where time begins to work with you, not against you. Stay open, my child. The acceleration you feel is guided. Not truth rises in ways no one can manage or contain. It does not rush forward aggressively. It simply stands, and everything false grows uncomfortable around it. What was hidden by silence can no longer remain buried because the ground itself is shifting. You will notice conversations changing tone, questions being asked that were once avoided, statements being reconsidered. The atmosphere no longer supports pretense. Masks slip not because they are ripped away, but because maintaining them requires more effort than honesty now does. Evidence surfaces quietly. Not dramatic proof, but consistency. Patterns becoming undeniable. contradictions revealing themselves without confrontation. Those who once controlled narrative lose influence as reality asserts itself. Truth does not argue, it clarifies. The one bound to you by destiny is seeing clearly now. Not selectively, not defensively. Clearly. They are recognizing what they almost lost, not as a threat, but as a reality that finally registered. The weight of that realization settles deep. It is sobering. It is humbling. It is irreversible. Fear rises in them, but not the kind that paralyzes. It is the fear of having come close to forfeiting something sacred through neglect rather than malice. That fear sharpens awareness. It strips away excuses. It brings focus where distraction once lived. They see you differently now, not as an option, not as comfort, but as someone sent, someone entrusted, someone whose presence carried timing they failed to honor. This realization brings regret, but also clarity. Regret that refines rather than corrodes. Truth is also exposing those who benefited from confusion. Their words no longer land the same way. Their influence weakens because it was built on distortion. As clarity increases, manipulation loses credibility. What once felt persuasive now feels intrusive. You may feel vindicated without feeling vengeful. This is how you know justice is unfolding correctly. Peace accompanies clarity. There is no urge to prove anything. Truth has already spoken. The atmosphere around you grows lighter because you are no longer carrying unanswered questions. You are no longer guessing motives. You are no longer doubting your discernment. Understanding has replaced speculation. This is the phase where truth cannot be reversed. Even if denied verbally, it has been recognized internally. And once recognized, it governs future choices whether admitted or not. Remain grounded, my child. Truth has risen, and it stands with you. Now I speak to you about your role, because you were never a bystander in this turning. You did not move loudly, but your presence shaped outcomes more than you understand. Heaven recorded not only what you did, but what you refused to do when impulse invited you to interfere. Your prayers mattered, even the ones you did not know how to articulate. The quiet ones, the exhausted ones, the moments where you simply surrendered the situation because you knew forcing clarity would cost you peace. Those moments altered timelines. They restrained outcomes that could have wounded you deeply. They bought space for truth to surface without dragging you into unnecessary conflict. You chose restraint when you could have demanded answers. You chose dignity when you could have pressed for reassurance. You chose faith when uncertainty would have justified withdrawal. These were not passive choices. They were acts of spiritual authority. You trusted me enough to let me handle what you could not control. There were points where your silence acted as a boundary. It prevented further distortion. It stopped manipulation from feeding on reaction. It forced others to sit with their own conscience instead of leaning on your availability for comfort. That silence was not abandonment. It was alignment. Your steadiness anchored the situation while everything else shifted. While others moved emotionally, you remained anchored. While confusion tried to escalate, you remained observant. That stability became a reference point. It exposed imbalance without accusation. Do not underestimate how much your obedience mattered. There were paths that would have opened had you acted prematurely, but those paths carried long-term erosion. You avoided them not because you saw danger clearly, but because you trusted my restraint more than your desire for resolution. Your role was not to fix, chase, or rescue. It was to remain true. That truth acted like a compass. Even when others lost their bearings, It remains steady, pointing toward alignment. You influence destiny not by force but by consistency. Heaven responds powerfully to consistency. It creates a field where justice can operate without chaos. Your consistency gave heaven room to move. A sacred connection between you and the one awakening was preserved because you did not contaminate it with fear-driven action. You allowed space for revelation to reach them unfiltered. You did not dilute truth by trying to manage outcomes. Now understand this, my child. What you demonstrated here is not temporary. It is formative. This season trained you for greater stewardship, greater influence, greater custom. You were entrusted with pressure, and you did not fracture under it. This is why movement is now safe. This is why acceleration will not overwhelm you. You have proven that you can hold stillness without losing yourself, that you can wait without compromising integrity. As destiny realigns, remember this truth. You are not powerful because you control outcomes. You are powerful because you align with me when outcomes are uncertain. Remain grounded in that identity. It will carry you through what comes next. Now hear the declaration that seals this turning, for I stand not only as witness, but as enforcer. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak where lines are drawn and futures are defended. What has been reviewed is now ruled upon. What has lingered is now concluded. Justice is not coming. Diazarame. I declare separation, where interference once lingered. What attached itself through delay is being removed without negotiation. Every influence that fed on hesitation, every voice that thrived in ambiguity, every presence that benefited from your uncertainty is being cut off from access. They will not follow you forward. They are not permitted to adjust to this new alignment. Protection now stands in front of you, not just around you. Before movement, before conversation, before decision, there is enforcement. What once slipped through unnoticed will now be stopped immediately. You will feel this as discernment sharpened, as boundaries strengthened, as peace guarding you without effort. Time that was mishandled is being repaid, not by reliving what was lost, but by acceleration where it matters. You will notice restoration not in chaos, but in efficiency. Things that once required strain will resolve with clarity. Opportunities will arrive already aligned, no longer demanding compromise. Justice here is not punishment. It is correction. What was distorted is being straightened. What was delayed is being resequenced. What was threatened is being secured. This is not emotional closure. This is structural realignment. Those who assumed your silence meant weakness will now feel distance they cannot cross. Not because you resist them, but because authority has shifted. You are no longer accessible to manipulation. Your availability is now governed by alignment. The one connected to you by destiny will feel this enforcement as well. Not as fear, but as clarity. They will recognize that this season cannot be handled casually. That what stands before them now is not an option to manage, but a truth to honor. This recognition will demand integrity from them, and they will know it. I declare that no accusation formed against you will find ground. No misrepresentation will take root, and no delay will be weaponized again. What was learned through pressure has now become wisdom, and wisdom carries authority. You are not stepping into uncertainty. You are stepping into guarded territory. Heaven has marked this transition. Angels are assigned not to test you, but to support movement that is now sanctioned. Stand without fear. Justice has spoken. Protection is active. And what unfolds next will do so under watch. The season is no longer weighing you. It is working for you. Come now, my child, into the settling that follows enforcement. This is the blessing of aligned time, when striving ceases and cooperation begins. You can feel it in your body before you can name it in your thoughts. The tension that once lived in your chest loosens. Breathing feels deeper. It comes more easily. This is how you know the season has turned. Time no longer presses against you. It walks beside you. What once felt delayed will now feel timely. Not rushed, not frantic, but precise. You will notice that opportunities no longer compete with your peace. They arrive with clarity. Decisions no longer drain you before they begin. They come with confirmation already attached. This is what happens when time aligns with destiny instead of testing it. You are entering a phase where days carry favor instead of friction, where effort produces fruit more quickly because resistance has been removed. This does not mean every moment will be easy, but it does mean nothing essential will be obstructed. What is meant for you will find you without pursuit. The one awakening alongside this shift will sense it too. They will feel the seriousness of this moment, not as pressure, but as clarity. They will understand that what stands before them now is sacred ground, not to be stepped on casually, not to be delayed indefinitely. They will recognize that time is no longer negotiable here. It is holy. Whether paths converge quickly or unfold gradually, know this: the alignment is real. Nothing is being forced. Nothing is being fabricated. What unfolds next will be rooted in truth, not momentum borrowed from fear. If connection continues, it will do so with integrity. If separation remains, it will be peaceful, not confusing. Either way, you are covered. This blessing is not only relational. It touches your calling, your creativity, your provision, your inner life. You will find yourself using time differently without trying. Less scattered, more intentional, more present. You will say no without guilt and yes without hesitation. This is wisdom settling in. You are no longer learning through pressure. You are learning through flow. Remember this season, not with heaviness but with gratitude. It trained you. It refined you. It proved to you that stillness can be powerful, that restraint can be authoritative, that waiting with me is never wasted. As you walk forward, carry this confidence gently. You are not behind. You are not catching up. You are right on time. And as this word seals itself in your spirit, if peace has met you here, I invite you to honor it. Stay connected to this stream of revelation. Share this message with those whose time is also awakening. Remain near this voice as future seasons unfold. And if your heart agrees, write in the comments, "My time is aligned," as a declaration before heaven that you receive this blessing. I am with you as you move forward. Time will now open doors instead of testing patience. Destiny will unfold without string. Go in peace, my child. This season has completed its work.